Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Atpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidyaduravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Yatha sarvani bhutani pratibhanti stitani cha yatraivo pashamam yanti tasmai satyatmane namaha. So where are we in our text?
We're in chapter 30 on starting with number 34, 35 on page 320.
All right, will you help us out, please, Puneet?
Avinabhavinashtatvam prasiddham sukha dukkhayoh tanuvasanam arthoyah sevyate va vivasanam nasau sukhayate nasau nashakale cha dukkhadah. The state of being inseparably connected or happiness and sorrow is famous. That object which is pursued with little desire or without desire, or with a thin mental impression created by past experience, or with no mental impression in the form of memory of the past, does not cause pleasure, nor does it produce sorrow at the time of its destruction.
So we have a technical term here, Tanu Vasana, the thinning of the vasana, sometimes Tanu Manasa, the thinning of the mind. So if the mind is thick, if vasana is thick, the mind extroverts into the world compulsively, then I am blown about by desirable and undesirable situations. But as the mind becomes pure or manonasha, destroyed, empty here, no vasana, or even the thinning of the vasana. The example I like to use, I can't use this as an image anymore because I changed the curtains, but I used to have lace curtains in the dining room. Some of you might have been coming long enough to remember that. So when you're inside the dining room, you could look through the lace curtains and see what's going on the patio. They're not like the shears so much, or even the heavy drapes. They didn't obscure vision. So also this Tanu Manasaha, this Tanu Vasana, this thinning gets to the point where my self nature becomes evident. This is all the beautiful imagery that's inherent in the name Arunachala. What's the difference between dawn and sunrise? People don't know it. There is a difference.
You go from lightness to darkness.
Sunrise is when the sun itself peeps above the horizon. But before that, there's a gloaming. Before the sunrise happens, dawn happens. Sun isn't all the way up, but you can see stuff in that beautiful pre-sunrise light. The term for that in Sanskrit is Aruna. It's the pre-sunrise gloaming. Aruna Achala. This pre-dawn, pre-sunrise light that never moves. Just beautiful poetry in that expression. That was the hill that Rama and Maharshi lived on, Arunachala. That's what the term means. So when the light of knowledge finally rises, even the lace curtains are burned up. But before that, we can see through some of the detritus of the mind of our vasanas. And we know what our essential nature is. Any thoughts on this? It's a beautiful, beautiful expression. Many of us are at that place. If your mind has gotten quiet and you've had this introversion of the attentive faculty, and in that sattvic mind, you've had moments where, oh yes, Chidananda Rupaham, I'm a form of bliss, consciousness. Then when the Tanu Vasana, the little lacy stuff, the thin vasanas happen, they're not problematic. So I yell at my boss, okay. So I get angry because I get on the wrong bus. Oh, no big deal. Is this making sense? Yes, no? Yes. All right, next verse.
Shina vasanaya buddhya karmayat kriyate nakha tattagad bejavat bhuyo nankuram pravimunchati. Sinless one. That action which is done through the intellect or the mind, with desire destroyed, or with mental impression thinned or lost, does not again throw up the sprout like a scorched seed. That is, such action does not cause rebirth.
So the person who's had even glimpses into her self-nature, if the mind gets triggered and you get upset, you don't take it seriously the way you used to. It's not like a person in total ignorance. You have made me mad and it's your fault and I'm going to punch you. It doesn't happen anymore. You go, oh, look at that arising. Wow. And I think it's Hafiz who has this beautiful imagery, comes from a desert culture where they have dust devils. Do you know what a dust devil is? It's like a little tiny cyclone. They're usually only about 3-4 feet tall. And in the dust of the desert, it'll move for a bit and then it just disappears. And it picks up the dust so you can actually see the little cyclone. So that's like the agitations we get at times. Oh, we may get annoyed. But like the dust devil in the desert, very quickly it just dissolves because of my knowledge. It's unreal. It's only a stupid mind state. And as Gita says, the yogi's mind is the same in heat and cold, pleasure and suffering, honor and dishonor. Notice it doesn't say the mind of the yogi is always with a nice warm body. All the situations are conducive and they're happy, and I'm always honored. It doesn't say that. When the situation is conducive, I'm happy. The situation is non-conducive, I'm unhappy. But they're not the same as they used to be. It doesn't rattle us like it used to. Why? First of all, I know nothing touches me. I'm like space. And what is happiness? The mind free from attachment. The mind freed from longing. The mind free from control issues. It's not out there. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
Kriyamana krita karma tulika deha shalmalehe jnana nilasa muddharta prodhiya kwapi gacchati. Action that is cotton, done or being done by the body that is the silk cotton tree, departs, flying away somewhere, shaken off or thrown up by the wind of knowledge.
Yes. So for the ordinary person whose mind's in ignorance, my actions produce reactions in the mind. And I go, oh, that was so wonderful, I want to do that again. Or, oh, that was so terrible. How could they have said that to me? We hang on to it in ignorance.
So even the case where if you don't like something, you're still thinking about it or hanging on about it, so you're creating an aversion.
Well, don't believe your mind. That's the deep, deep lesson here. If you're doing chintya after the fact rumination, you know what it is. Just the force of the past maturing. It's never out there. Drop it. If you can't drop it, chant the name of the Lord. Do seva. But don't believe it. Is that useful? Again, don't try to be a spiritual person. Don't try to be an enlightened person. It's terribly burdensome. Instead, know you are Brahman, and no mind state touches you. Now, this is not licensed to be a jerk. Be a person of good manners simply out of compassion for the rest of us, please. But even when you're not, it doesn't touch you. It's a very important point. Did we talk in this class about the Buddhist idea of the second arrow? I did that in one class last week. I can never remember which one.
Oh, the thirsty class.
It was?
The thirsty class.
Okay. So the second arrow in Buddhism. So one arrow hits it, that's my suffering, my attachment, my identification, my control issue, my expectation. The second arrow is, oh, I'm a piece of crap because I'm being such a crappy yogi. How did I, or I'm a terrible husband, or I'm a terrible wife, or I'm a terrible employee, or I'm a terrible this. How could I have done that? I'm such a pile of poop. That's the second arrow of suffering, which we shoot into ourselves. So at least let go of that one. This is a true story. I had a wonderful chat this morning with a dear friend of mine, a musician, a pianist, and he has praying hands, the Ch.30 that just comes through when he's playing. And I met him at the Franciscan School of Theology when I was a student there. And I was singing and he was playing. We had this instant connection because we both got that, oh, this person makes music on a whole nother level. And when I was able to, I hired him to play at our Saturday Mass. And he did for 14 years. The day I quit, he left St. Augustine too. He's now back in Washington, D.C. But anyway, he was supposed to show up at 4:30 on Saturdays for rehearsal for the 5 o'clock Mass. And one time he shows up like at 20 minutes to, 17 minutes to. So I was the jerk. I was all into wanting to be huffy and you're late. Yes, I am. So what I saw was I was trying to punish him, but he wouldn't take it on. And I just started to laugh. I couldn't make him feel bad. He wasn't going to do it. I just laughed and laughed. Now, he's not a yogi, but he's deeply spiritual. He wasn't going to take that on. He was late. Okay. That's all. So my waggy finger, you wasn't going to. Oh, I'm so contrite. Yes, I was late. I'll never do it again. Bullshit. But that's what I wanted to do. My waggy finger. So we don't take that stuff on. Even when we screw up. Notice I didn't say if we screw up. I said when we screw up. Why?
You're going to screw up.
At the level of the equipment. To try to be perfect is like trying to count to the highest number. There's no there to get to. Now, here is an attitude that I have found useful. Some people view the character, view the personality as I'm a sick person trying to get well, or I'm a vicious person trying to get virtuous, or I'm an immoral person trying to get moral, or I'm a pathological person psychologically and I'm trying to get healthy. Swamiji used a very interesting term. He wrote a series of books called The Art of Man-Making. So what you want to do is stand back and look at this thing called your upadhis, your equipment, your body, mind, intellect, and see it as a work of art. And you've got a very short period of time to work on it. Believe me, in a blink of an eye, a lifetime is over. And it's not art like a painting. It's art like a song or a dance. Painting is concrete, you hang it on the wall. But a song or a dance, what happens? You perform it and then gone. Such is a human life. And one of the most important things I ever learned about music, this was back in 1984. I was singing up at Grace Cathedral. Wonderful gig. It was a choir of 16 professional men and 20 boys from the cathedral school. And I was listening to the choir master work with the kids. And he used to say, in music, take that out and put in life, you have to have instant amnesia. When you make a mistake, in music, you can't go back and go, what did I do wrong? Why? The music keeps going. So does life. Let it go. Instant amnesia. And if you've ever studied or owned any Japanese art, any of you have any Japanese art in your home? One of the things a Japanese artist does on purpose is they put a flaw in the pot or the painting deliberately, because the art should reflect life. It's very different than the person who's doing a painting and they look at the painting and rather than saying, oh, the tree needs a little more green up here, they go, ugh, what a horrible painting, and then they stab it, which is what you and I do to our psyches all the time. How could I have done that? I'm so terrible. All right, next verse.
Sarvaiva hi kala janto anabhyasena nashyate esha jnana kala tvantaha sakrit jata dine dine vriddhim eti baladeva sukshe travyukta bijavat. All the arts or skills of a living being perish by the absence of practice. But this art of knowledge, once arisen or engendered within, grows every day quite strongly, like the seed sown in good soil.
Yes. So, Pablo Casals, the great cellist, used to say, if I skip one day of practice, I notice it. If I skip 2 days of practice, my wife notices. If I skip 3 days of practice, my public notices it. But once knowledge of the self has dawned on the mind, one ceases practice, as we did when we were a sadhak, a seeker. And because of the nature of the shift in identity, this understanding of the mind and the world, over time, the mind gets emptier and emptier and emptier. When I first met Swamiji in 1975, oh, he was such a dynamic personality, so full of energy. There was just a lot of Swamiji there. But the last years of his life, that personality had become so diaphanous. He was so empty. This incredible, almost like a transparency. So this capacity to retire into the self, that has no end either. How deeply the mind of the yogi can revel in the self. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
यावत् विषयभोगाशा जीवाख्या तावत् आत्मनः अविवेकेन संपन्ना सा प्राप्स्याय हि वस्तुतः विवेक वशतो याता क्षयम् आशा यदा तदा आत्मा जीवत्वमुत्सृज्य ब्रह्मताम् एत्य नामयः. As long as there is the desire for enjoyment of objects, so long the self is called jiva, or the individual soul. That is, the state of individualized consciousness comes into being. Even that desire is indeed brought about by absence of discrimination, not as a natural consequence. When desire is destroyed on account of discrimination, then the self, giving up the state of individual soul or individualized consciousness, goes to Brahmanhood, or the state of supreme spirit, free from blemish or unhappiness.
Yes. So, if the mind is under the influence of avidya, of ignorance, what it is my bundle of vasana. Vasana has two powers: veiling power, varana shakti, projecting power, vikshepa shakti. So when I go to sleep, my mind, that's where this all takes place, my essential nature. Then the mind projects an individual knower of the world and a perceived world. That third element, kartavya, jonesing. I want. That is the karma chakra, the wheel of karma. That is samsara. That is maya. That is dukkha. Has many, many, many names. Its cause is avidya, the non-apprehension of my essential nature. Actions do not destroy ignorance. Knowledge destroys ignorance. Knowledge is the fruit of investigation. But investigation into the nature of myself is only fruitful in a quiet mind. So if the mind is still gross, has a lot of vasana pressure, even hearing the Vedanta from Lord Krishna himself does no good. And all of a sudden, I have my life and I have my problems and I am perceiving the world and they're doing it right and they're doing it wrong. And that seems very weak. But for the person of steady wisdom, it's all very different. I am that space of consciousness. And the movie goes by. I go nowhere, I do nothing. I simply know. Next one.
चिन्मात्रत्वं प्रयातस्य तीर्णमृत्यो अचेतसः यो भवेत् परमानन्द केनासौ उपमीयते. That supreme bliss which occurs in one who is attained to the state of mere consciousness, who has crossed over death, and who is devoid of the thinking mind, with which can it be compared?
So again, words fall short. The woman of knowledge finally knows clearly what is happiness. My mind can be happy, can be blissful, because myself is the source of all bliss, the fountainhead of all joy. Keep immersing the mind in the self. Soak the mind in Brahman. Drown the mind in the self. Over and over. Remember who you are. Come home. Hurry home. And Swamiji would say, hurry home. Are you okay?
Yes,
You're supposed to drink the water, not breathe it.
that's true.
The fishes do that. But we forget. The mind extroverts again. And then if ignorance returns, the world seems very real. Yeah, but Jim, that's a super illusion. I've got to be upset about that. It's just a mind state. Next verse.
एतत् स्वरूपम् आसाद्य प्रकृति परिशाम्यति अहङ्कृते विमोहस्य क्षणे येयं विलीयते प्रकृति भावनानादि मोक्ष स्यात् एष एव सः. Having obtained this natural state of oneself, nature or the material cause of the universe is extinguished. This nature, called imagination, which manifests this universe, is dissolved by the destruction of delusion in the form of ego or the sense of I. This alone can be that liberation.
Yes. Yes. So when we say this material world is destroyed, it is like the child who was taught, oh, there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And on a spring day, she looks outside and says, Mommy, there's a rainbow. Get the car. Let's go get the pot of gold. And Mommy puts the child in the car and they're driving and the rainbow keeps receding. Then the child has an awareness. Oh, seen, but not real. So for the woman of realization, the world is still seen, but there's no world there. Her senses report name and form, but her knowledge is Brahman alone. This is consciousness. Vijnana Gana, a homogeneous mass of consciousness. The Buddhists use the term dependent origination. So this ego sense, I am my body, or I am my body plus my personality, and the conviction that the world is solid and real and separate from me arise simultaneously. They arise together. They fall together. You can either meditate on the dreamlike nature of the world, and when the world falls, the ego will fall. Or you can stay with Koham, who am I? And when the Ankriti falls, then the world will fall. Because they're the same thing. Next one.
Section 4. Jivan Mukti Sthiti. State of liberation while living. Yena kenachit achanno, yena kenachit ashatihi, yatra kvachana shayi cha, sa samagriva rajate. By whatever so is clothed, by whatsoever he is fed, and wheresoever sleeping, he shines like an emperor.
So, what is the primary characteristic of the Jivan Mukta? She knows she's not the body. She knows she's not a person. She knows that she's Brahman and has no relationship with any of the names and forms. Body, mind, intellect moves, feels, and thinks because of me, but I am ever asangaha, unattached to it. So no matter what they're doing, what their station of life is, they glow. Why? Because with knowledge of the self, with the freedom, with a liberated personality. It's another way to talk about what Jivan Mukta means. The mind is at peace. When the mind's at peace, then you have happiness. Mind is no longer afflicted by fear. Mind no longer takes desire seriously. Next verse.
Varna dharma shamachara shastrayantra trayojitah gambhirascha prasannaccha ramate swatmanatmani. Abandoned by the compulsions or restraints of the scriptures, the duties of caste and the conduct befitting the order or period of life, profound and pleased or tranquil, he rejoices or sports in the self by his own self.
So the scriptures enjoin various dharmas depending on our caste. Even if you're not a Hindu, by your station in life. You know, if you're married, probably it's not wise to cheat on your husband, cheat on your wife. That's station in life. You do your duty. If you're doing lectures on empathy, that's your drag. That's what the equipment does. But the Jivan Mukta is not identified with any. And this idea of Leela, I love it. Leela here meaning a theatrical presentation of play. So I was watching a YouTube video about great 20th century singer. His name was John Vickers. He was Canadian, one of my favorites. Not only was it a just incredible voice, but he was a really good actor. And there's footage of him getting ready. I think he was to play Othello. So here's this white Canadian playing the role of a Moor. The opera's based on the Shakespeare play. So there he is in his dressing room, putting on makeup and doing all this stuff. And he says, what a strange way to make a living. Very humble about it. Put on a face, you put on a costume, and you pretend you're somebody else. Now, John Vickers didn't get to write the opera. And someone else, the producer, the artistic director, cast him in the role. They didn't cast him to play Desdemona. I cast him to play Othello. I didn't cast him to play Iago, the villain. He was the hero, Othello. So we don't get to choose what role this thing plays in life. That's Ishwara's job. So just put on the costume, put on the makeup, say your lines. But you know, Aham Brahmasmi. I am ever pathing, witnessing consciousness. Vast and empty like the sky. Any thoughts on this? And sometimes the play we're in is a tragedy. Next day may be a comedy. Next day you may play a leading role. The next day you have a walk-on part. Doesn't matter. You are none of it. Just a role. All right, next verse.
Sarva karma phala tyagi nitya tripto nirashchayah na punyena na papena netarena cha lipyate. He is one who has renounced the fruits of all actions, ever satisfied and devoid of support or dependence. He is not tainted by good or evil, or meritorious acts or sin, or also by others.
Yeah. So I've done theatrical things, but in plays. I've also been in operas. There are times when you forget your lines. Oops. So you improvise a bit. Do you remember where you are? Or there's a prompter who's feeding you the lines. Sometimes that's what our life is like. We screw up. But whatever happens, gain and loss, honor and dishonor, conducive or non-conducive environments, the mind of the yogi is sama drishta, equality. And she knows that the author of the script is guna and karma in the end. Just the force of the past maturing. I had the strangest morning. I get up, I hadn't been to the bank in weeks and weeks and weeks, and I had a whole bunch of cash from people who had left contributions in the begging bowl. I had put them in the silent way account. So I go to the bank, and then I was going to go up to a meeting up on Piedmont Avenue. So I walk to the bus stop on Grand by Webster, and I'm there. The bus comes, and I get on the bus. All of a sudden, it gets to Harrison, makes a left turn. He says, "Is this the number 12?" And the driver says, "Oh, no, this is the 33. I had no idea the 33 stopped there. Did the driver say, "This is a 33" when I got on like they were supposed to? No. So I get off, get on the bus stop at Harrison and Grand, no problem. Get on, and I said, "Oh God, this has cushioned cloth seats, blah, 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 blah." And I was talking with the driver, and then I said, is this the 12? And he says, oh no, this is the NL. This is the one that goes to San Francisco. So, Perkins, I get off the bus again. 3 different buses to get where I was going. Why? I don't know. Karma. Always. Who knows where the chains of causation are lost in time? Got there eventually. Was not late. And if I'd been late, okay. You're late. Oops. But understand, being a woman or a man of wisdom doesn't necessarily mean you hit all the green lights of life. But everything that comes along becomes useful. So on another occasion, I'm across the street. It's 11:10. I'm taking a bus for a 12 o'clock meeting. Bus never comes. 11:20, 11:30. Finally, 11:40, the bus comes. I get to practice patience. Not one of my greatest character traits yet. Still working on it. Or the one that I still working on. I'm a blind backseat driver with a poor sense of direction. So I was telling Puneet how to drive to the restaurant on Saturday. What were he snapped at me. It was funny. Still there after 45 years of yoga. But these things don't necessarily all go away. But you don't take them seriously anymore. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
Spatika pratibhimbena nayati ranjanam yatha tajña karma phale nantaha tatha nayati ranjanam. As a crystal does not obtain coloring by a reflected image, that is, by reflecting a colored object, so the knower of that reality does not attain to pleasure or gratification within by the fruit of actions.
Yes. Spatika pratibhimbena. Pratibimba is a reflection. Spatika is crystal. So if you have a piece of quartz that's clear, and someone has 3 pieces of colored velvet, one is blue, one is red, and one is green, and you put the crystal on each one of these colored pieces of velvet, the crystal looks blue, the crystal looks red, the crystal looks green. But if you pick it up, oh, the crystal is colorless. So, whatever happens to the body, whatever reactions, responses that happen in the mind, whatever stupid thoughts the intellect thinks, Brahma Satyam Jagan Vidya. They are all real. None of it ever touches me. Now, there is a paradox here. Swamiji used to say the way to heal the mind is to get out of the mind. I had lunch today with a fellow I'm working with. He's pretty clear he's got some PTSD just by some reactions that he's having. And nowhere near being a yogi. He did 7 years in the military. You know, I have no idea what these traumas are. My suspicion is stuff that's earlier than his military service, but that's for him to work out with the psychotherapist. You know. But the point is, at one level, we do all that stuff. We go through family of origin stuff. We may work on trauma or childhood abuse or stuff like that. There's great value in that. Yoga says it will all arise if you just sit. If you take a 30-day meditation retreat, it will all come up. It's usually a lot cheaper than a psychotherapist. But most of us don't have the yoga balam. What's yoga balam?
Strength of yoga.
Yeah. We're not courageous enough to do it that way. We take our time. Trust your intuition. You'll know what to do. All that stuff has to come up. And we don't ultimately find freedom by changing the ego from one state into another state, per se. Get out. Get out. And that heals the mind. It starts to right itself. That sounded like somebody got hit, didn't it? Yeah. Oops. All right, next verse. Excitement.
Nistotro nirvikarascha puja vivarjitah samyuktascha viyuktascha sarvachara nayakramaihi. He may be without hymns in praise of deities, destitute of worship or object to be worshipped, without change, and endowed with, as well as bereft of, the proper manner of all behavior.
So, we cannot tell whether someone is a saint, a realized soul, by their outer behavior. I was talking with a student who is deeply involved in understanding the challenges that are going on in Indian politics. He doesn't particularly care for the Hindu nationalism. He has a very dear friend who's a Kashmiri Muslim. And he saw a recording of a speech that Swamiji gave, which he didn't agree with. So his conclusion is, obviously Swamiji couldn't have been realized. He couldn't have said that. You can't tell. Some saints are like rascals. Some are very pure. Swamiji used to say, if you cannot see who I am, then just see me as a mouthpiece for scripture. Do not get involved with my personality. Because the degree that you are identified with your personality, you'll get fixated on the personality of the teacher. That starts to become problematic. It starts to become problematic. Just if the teacher is to a large degree pure, it's easier for the student. There's less crap in the way to distract them. Right? But the person of steady wisdom has nothing to be gained by ritual, by religious observances. There are no rules. They're out of control. All right. How many more in this section?
4 more.
Okay, let's see if we can finish.
Tasmat no dvijjate loko, lokat no dvijjate cha saha, tanum tyajatu va tirthe, pachasya grihepi va, ma kadachana va rajan, vartamanepi vakshane. The world does not shrink from him, or is not afraid of him, nor does he shrink from the world, or is he afraid of the world. Let him give up his body in a holy place, or even in the house of a dog feeder or a person of a degraded class. King, let him give up his body, never at all, or even at the present moment. It matters little.
Yes. So we have these apparent distinctions of being jiva and mukta, liberated while living, or videha mukti, videha, being a videha mukti, yeah. Person who's liberated beyond the body. Essentially, they're the same. What the person of steady wisdom has no relationship with the body, whether they're going to die or whether they're going to be in the body for the rest of eternity, makes no difference. This is it. What if it's going to be just like this for the rest of eternity? What do you need to do to be at peace? Very simple. Next one.
Sapujaniya sa stutyato, narmaskaya sa yatnataha, sa nirikshyo bhivadhyascha, vibhuti vibhavaishina. He is fit to be worshipped, praised, saluted with diligence or zeal, looked for or contemplated, and respectfully greeted by one desirous of prosperity and greatness.
So we honor the Mahatmas. Why? As Tripura Rahasyam says, the root cause of liberation, sadhu sangha, association with a person of steady wisdom. But you don't get the freedom with your face on the ground, a servile attitude. Meet the teacher face to face. Ask them what you need to know. Of course, there's respect. Of course, there's great love at the end. But if you treat your guru like the Murti in the mandir, that's it. Next one.
Yagnatirtha tapodanaihi na tada sadhyate padam satam atma vidam bhaktya sevanena tu labhyate. That abode or position is not reached by religious sacrifices, visit to holy places, austerity, and charity, but it is obtained by the devoted service of sages who have realized the self.
Yes. So, if you can find a woman or a man of steady wisdom, and you can surrender, your mind can go where they go, and maybe something can happen. But all the various religious actions that we do with a value. They help to purify the mind. But that's the value. One more or two?
One more. Evam uktva sa bhagavan manu brahmam griham yayau ikshva karupitam drishtim avashtabhya sthiro bhavat. Thus, having spoken that when venerable Manu departed for the abode of Brahma, the creator god, Ikshvaku too, resting upon or by the help of that knowledge, became quiescent or firm in his realization.
Yes. So that ends that particular story. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Shishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.